Hey everyone, and welcome back to our deep dive into dark psychology. This is part 14, and today we're getting into the really heavy stuff. We're going to decode the manipulator's most advanced psychological weapons. You know, those tactics that twist your sense of reality, leave you completely confused, and put all the power right back in their hands. All right, let's get started. Have you ever walked away from a conversation and just felt dizzy? Like your head is spinning, you can't quite figure out what just happened, but you know for sure that you're feeling confused, you're doubting yourself, and you're just off balance? It really feels like you just lost a game you didn't even know you were playing, right? Well, here's something you need to understand, and it's super important. That confusion, that fog in your head, it is not an accident. It's a manufactured psychological fog. It's a deliberate strategy, a cloud they create so you can't tell the difference between what's right and what's wrong anymore. And in this explainer, we're going to clear that fog, one tactic at a time. All right, let's kick things off with the first, and honestly, probably the most destructive weapon in their playbook, gaslighting. The term actually comes from a 1944 movie called Gaslight, where a husband slowly convinces his wife that she's going insane. And look, this is so much more than just lying. It's a sophisticated art of completely rewriting your reality. This quote right here, it just perfectly captures the core damage of gaslighting. The most dangerous part isn't that the manipulator is lying. No. The most insidious part is that the victim, and that could be any of us, stops blaming the manipulator and starts blaming their own mind, their own memory, their own sanity. You literally start to blame yourself for what's happened. So what is gaslighting really? Well, think of it as a covert manipulation tactic where someone very slowly, very methodically just chips away at your confidence, your memory, your perception, even your sanity. Bit by bit, you start to question everything until you're convinced that you must be the one who's wrong. Let's break down how this actually works, step by step. First, they plant a seed of doubt. They'll subtly question your memory about small things, like, are you sure you remember that correctly? Then step 2, they just deny reality. They'll flatly deny something they said or did. That never happened. Step 3 is a direct attack on your sanity. You'll be called too sensitive or crazy or dramatic. And finally, in the last step, they position themselves as the calm, rational, sane one, making you feel like you're the one who's acting weird. This comparison makes the difference crystal clear. You see, in a healthy disagreement, both perspectives are valued. Someone might say, I remember it differently. But in gaslighting, your reality is directly attacked. You're crazy, that never happened. The goal isn't to find the truth. The goal is to make you doubt your own truth. So, while gaslighting attacks your reality, our next tactic, intermittent reinforcement, attacks your emotions. To put it simply, this is a technique used to create such a powerful emotional addiction that you become completely dependent on the manipulator. This quote explains the psychology of it perfectly. The manipulator is the one causing you pain, and at the same time, they're the only one you look to for relief from that pain. It's this hot and cold push-pull behavior that's so powerful. It gets you trapped in a cycle, always hoping for their approval. So how does this work? I want you to think of a slot machine. You pull the lever, but you have no idea when you're going to get a reward. It's the same thing here. Sometimes you get tons of love, attention, and praise. And then suddenly, nothing. It's that unpredictability that floods your brain with dopamine, the same chemical linked to addiction, and you get hooked on chasing that next high. This chart shows that emotional roller coaster perfectly. First, they shower you with praise and affection, taking you to an emotional high. Then, out of nowhere, they withdraw everything, which sends you crashing into an emotional low. And what follows is a constant craving, a real addiction to get their approval back. And this is where the biggest trap of this tactic lies. When the manipulator finally stops treating you badly and just acts normal again, that normalcy feels like a gift. The absence of pain feels like pleasure. But please, always remember this. 0 is not a gift. 0 is the baseline. Respectful behavior isn't a reward, it's the absolute bare minimum. Okay, so we've seen how they control your reality and your emotions. Now let's look at how they control your social circle. Our final core tactic is called triangulation. This is when the manipulator brings a third person into the dynamic between two people. And why would they do that? To control the entire social chessboard and keep you off balance. The principle here is simple, and it's as old as time. Divide and rule. They maintain their power by pitting people against each other, because when everyone else is busy fighting or feeling insecure, all the power and control stays right in the manipulator's hands. So, what is triangulation? It's the act of bringing a third person into a conversation to control what's happening. For example, constantly comparing you to an ex-partner, or saying something like, my friend also thinks you're wrong, just to validate their own point. And the most crucial part, this third person can be real or they can be completely imaginary. And what does this actually do to you? Well, for starters, it creates massive insecurity and a sense of competition. The manipulator becomes the center of all information because they're the one talking to everyone about everyone else. It slowly isolates you from your friends and family, and it leaves you with this constant feeling that you're being judged or compared to others. Now for the biggest question of all, why are these tactics so effective? Why do they work so well on so many of us? Well, it's not magic. It's because they exploit our most basic, universal human needs. Let's think about this for a second. We all have a deep need for a stable, predictable reality. Gaslighting attacks that need directly. We all crave consistent connection and affection. Intermittent reinforcement turns that need into a weapon against us. And we all need a sense of social belonging, to be part of a community. Triangulation exploits that need. So if you fall for these tactics, it's not a personal failing. It's a manipulation of universal human psychology. Okay, we've spent a lot of time understanding the problem. Now it's time to talk about the solution. How do you get out of this psychological fog and build a mental fortress? How do you reclaim your clarity? Here is your clarity toolkit. First, be the scribe. Document conversations, write things down. It gives you an objective record. Second, be the anchor. Trust your gut feeling. That anxiety and confusion you feel, that's data. It's telling you something is wrong. Third, find the outsider. Get a reality check from a trusted, neutral friend who's not in the situation. Fourth, use the clock. Never be rushed into a decision. Just say, I need time to think about this. And fifth, use the question. Always ask for specifics. Vague statements are a manipulator's best friend. And when you need to set a boundary, follow these 3 simple steps. 1, state your boundary calmly and clearly. For instance, please do not speak to me in that tone. 2, pair it with a consequence you can actually follow through on. If you continue to speak to me that way, I will end this conversation. And 3, this is the most important part. Do not justify it. State your boundary once, don't fall into the trap of explaining it over and over. Your actions will speak louder than your words ever could. And I want you to remember this. Clarity isn't some magical feeling that comes and goes. It is a decision that you make, and it is a practice that you maintain every single day. You choose to be clear. So now we've learned how to recognize these tactics and how to defend against them with clear boundaries. But honestly, that's just the first step. Now we need to move beyond just plain defense. Recognizing these attacks is absolutely the most critical first step. In our next part, part 15, we're going to learn how to build the mental armor that makes these attacks just bounce right off you before they can even do any damage. I hope you'll join me for that.